Canada is being conquered. That was the plan all along. The Europeans, acting as proxies for the City of London, are out to own Canada and use it as a weapon for their global designs. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Hey Blaine, hey thank you so much for making yourselves available, guys. Canada just announced a new Governor General. And what people don't know is that the Governor General is the Crown's agent and has the authority to dismiss the government. So it doesn't matter who the Canadian people vote for. If they vote in a government that the Crown disapproves of, the Governor General can dissolve that parliament. The Governor General is the one that signs bills into, so they become acts, and can also refuse to assent to bills. But it gets even worse, doesn't it, EM?
Yes. Yeah. This one was sent there specifically to liquidate Canada.
What's her name? And then Susan Cookin did a
I don't
video.
remember it. Yeah, I don't
Ambrose or
remember.
something. Let us know in the
Yeah.
comments the name of the new Governor General.
It'll be a household word here soon. Let me make it far worse. The Governor General of Canada also becomes the Commander in Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Oh, yes.
And they have the ability to run the table with their military. And so when we talk about this fable that we were all taught as kids in school about the UK and this ornamental monarchy and symbolic head of the country, doesn't it really just more feel like now that the camouflage is off and the king is actually really in charge?
I don't think that's the case. I think exactly what I've been looking at for years. The king is held hostage. The
Oh, I
family is
agree.
held
He's reading a
hostage.
script as
He's
a
reading a
hostage.
script.
He's reading a script.
Correct. Correct. And it's been
So
that
we
way
don't even get
since,
redress.
correct. It's been that way since 1660 and Charles II. There hasn't been a monarch that hasn't been, held at the knife point and their family at knife point since 1660. Now we're seeing, just as we're seeing in the EU, we are seeing the move to liquidate the crown as an institution as well.
Whoa, hold on. How so? Liquidate the
Well,
crown?
you use the you use the title or authorities and power of the crown that you're holding hostage to destroy countries, destroy the Commonwealth, to take all the assets, all the wealth, everything that can be taken, do everything in your power to try and drive the world to war, particularly the United States into war, either internally or externally, and dump it all on the crown. Blame it all on the crown.
Okay. Now, by the crown, you mean the royal family versus the City of London.
I mean the institution of the crown. I don't mean the family. Now, yes, of course, the family as well, but the institution. They're done with the charade of a constitutional monarchy.
Okay. Why do you say that, Mr. EM?
Just the way that they're acting, so we see the ways in which the crown's power is being used around the world. At the same time, we're seeing all of the social media and media efforts to discredit the crown, to discredit the monarch, to articulate that, the King of England, as Tom talks about, that, the King of England is at war with the United States. It's not true. King of England is held hostage and his family's held hostage. However, his authorities and his rights and privileges and not so much his, but the crown's are being used to try and drive the world to war and to steal as many assets as necessary so that Europe and, through the City of London structure can recapitalize itself and war with the United States, because we really are coming to the end of a 400-year English Civil War. And that means the United States and the United Kingdom are going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight where it's raging everywhere around us. And they will they will liquidate the crown and the crown's assets and powers in this fight.
And then they will use Canada in order to attack the United States.
Correct, correct. It
And
has the
also,
natural resources, it has the energy, it has everything they need to mount war and to sustain and back war. And their assets already here in government in the United States everywhere. See,
And a
we all look at
pacified population.
and a pacified population. So if you want to foster a civil war, a long-running civil war to disillusion the United States, you got to resource and back that. And that's Canada. They have nowhere else in the world that they can get those resources from. And there's nowhere else in the world with the proximity to the United you can't try to wage this war across the oceans.
right. They're being kicked out of Africa. Australia's too far away. South America won't let them in. And the US
Yeah.
has got dominion, increasing
Yeah.
dominion over South America. And Russia, forget it. They lost that one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that all that's left is Canada.
Yeah.
And then just to let people know, if you don't, 89% of Canada is owned by the Crown. And Mark Carney, just incredible, incredible political legacy. He was on the soapbox from the when he could speak, campaigning on behalf of people, a politician through and through. No, Bank of England.
Yeah.
So it's like, tell me. So was it? Tell me how how the City of London runs things without saying the City of London runs things. Now, one of you said, I can't remember, that he was put in place in particular in order to
Yeah.
attack the US.
Correct.
He was groomed.
Why do you say
Yeah.
that, Blaine?
If you go through his pedigree, all the right schools, all English, the best of the best, and arises very little time in Canada, but arises to the instrument of the City of London, the president of the Bank of England, and he was there at a very let's say he had seen it all. So from MI6s and Soros's cashiering of the British pound and the raping and stealing of assets just about everywhere, everything that pisses off a British citizen about the UK. Mark Carney's got his fingerprints all over it. And he has been in the financial, he is a trained financialist killer. With his private equity firm Brookfield, everybody wants to rag out on BlackRock, and they should, but Brookfield, they don't even know a restriction that's in their path. And he's essentially raping Canada right now. He was placed in Canada for this role. He was placed there to check power on Trump, and he is not even blushing about what Brookfield has raped Canada's resources for, and it's only going to go up from here.
So
Well,
what
this
is
is why they go ahead.
I was just gonna know, what has he done? But also, are you suggesting he was groomed from a young age for this role? Is that what they do?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, where they're going to actually be deployed, that's it's time and situation dependent. But
And he's cashierable, by the way.
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
And now he has a crown agent who, for all intents and purposes, if we boil it down, has sole responsibility for the use of violence within Canada.
Right.
So whatever they are preparing to liquidate Canada and take Canada's natural resources from the Canadians, whatever their intention is, they know violence is coming. And that's why this new general, whatever the term is, was put
Governor
into
General.
position. Governor General was put into position there.
That's exactly right. And
So they're
this should be the signal to the Canadians that that they're not even hiding it anymore, and that's why we're going through a phase change right now, because worldwide you can see lines of effort and how attack vectors are forming up. Well, let's look at where their failures are. They didn't get their big war with Russia. They're not going to get 75 trillion in collaterals of dividing up Russia per Kaya Kallas's fantasy and script card to play out. The Canadian option, first off, they'll never meet their globalist goals, depopulation and all of that other happy crap, without the United States being defeated. and
Correct.
and Canada is the attack vector of attack vectors. But how you know we're changing phases right now is the appointment of the governor general. And how do you know that the Canadian people are pacified? Nobody's even raising a pinky.
Nope.
Well, the Albertans are. They just had a 300,000 plus petition to vote for
Oh, be
secession.
careful about the Albertans. Be careful about that. So here, let's talk about Alberta. EM and I live very close to Alberta. I'm half Canadian. I talk to the Albertans all the time. I'm in business with some of them, and what I can tell you is that um, while the Albertans themselves seem to be very satisfied that they have their petitions done and they're on their way to a place called the October 19th vote as to whether Alberta is going to secede from the Union. This is another reason for the appointment of the governor general, because what Mark Carney has already intoned in certain speeches that he's made is that he reserves the right to invoke the Canadian Emergency Act, which can which he can declare whatever Alberta has said and done within the what they call the Charter of Rights is illegal, and then they will say your vote on October 19th to secede is null and void. They will depose Danielle Smith, although not really. She's an insider working for Mark Carney. She's the premier of Alberta.
Mhm.
And it's a rigged deck. It really is a rigged deck. And it's a way for them to put down a rebellion in a very scripted way. And the only ones who don't know what's up is the poor Albertans who don't see what's coming. They think they're on their way to a place where they just voted themselves out of a tyranny. Nothing could be further from the truth. And if you want to see the governor general activate the military and the RCMP against the Albertans, that setup is there now.
Well, and they're continuing to flood tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Indians into
Yes,
Canada
good
to
point. Good point.
completely replace the population. Indians,
And they will fire
British,
on Canadians. That's why they're
correct,
coming.
correct. So Canada is in a very, very, very bad place. What are we going to do about it? Um, I've said this before. If we wanted most of the world's, fuckery to stop, we would we would take and hold the crown of England. No, not violently, unless necessary to get rid of the Praetorian threat, but we would liberate and free the crown of England, allow it to, use its rights, privileges, constitutional prerogatives, etc., to disband parliament, call for new elections, hold the judiciary, to account, all the things that the crown still has the power to do if its physical safety is assured. This would stop all of this. So what do they have to do? They have to make sure that we think the crown is just a bunch of child-eating pedos and that the crown is this malevolent actor instead of a captured pawn, right? If Trump hadn't been, one, if it wasn't just luck of miracle, several miracles, and it wasn't this, extraordinarily capable security details around him, we'd have the same captured problem here in the United States. That's what we're watching in Canada is exactly what we were going through with, under Biden administration, where Biden wasn't the real power. It was all this, you know, Rhodes scholars and, all of these British agents
Yeah,
work,
that's right.
right? So, and the Rhodes Scholarship is just one of those process
Yep.
or pathways, right? So, you know, Canada is Canada's natural resources. If they can't get Russia and they can't get Russia's natural resources, Canada has massive natural resources, a much smaller population, and they're just walking in and taking it without a single shot fired. Well, the only thing that stands in their way of that ultimately is the United States. And, if we look, Europe's unraveling, as we've discussed before. Europe's unraveling. Europe's going to have to deal with Europe. This conflict in Canada, though, is really the conflict with the city of London. It's a war between the city of London and Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
In
that's
Canada, and
right.
again, this is the English Civil War, and the battleground right now that we're losing is Canada. And we can't afford here in America, and the English Anglosphere can't afford to lose Canada like this.
Right.
Can't.
So
Yeah.
the way I would war game this out a little bit is if you made the assumption that in October, the Albertan secession is going to fail, and if you take that next step and forces are brought to bear to arrest Danielle Smith, and it'll be bullshit because she's with them, and then put Alberta under martial law, essentially, to the extent as to how you get your comms and your preparatory communications right. My recommendation, if I were sitting in the National Security Council for the United States, would be this validates every single concern that the president issued about our northern tier to include Greenland, and that it's in the national security interest of the United States to start annexing portions, if not vast swaths, maybe the entirety of Canada, and that we're not going to do that because you'd have a population across the country. And I say this as a half Canadian, always keeping my finger on the pulse of their politics. Just outside, go 50 miles to the east of Vancouver, all the way across the entire thing, omitting Ottawa, and you would have a population that would be wanton for that. My opinion, Omen.
Yeah.
Sign up for my free newsletter. I will soon be doing group calls for paid subscribers. I will also be launching a community platform where people can discuss and share ideas about issues that I've covered on my channel. Links in the description below.
Yeah, I think the only way that this all works is that the United States is going to have to free the crown from,
How?
I
How,
don't know
Ian?
exactly. I don't know exactly. Um, Somehow the crown is going to have to be broken free from its Praetorian problem.
Yeah. And concomitant with that is the city of London and its power being destroyed.
Yeah.
Let me say something.
That charter needs to be revoked, right? But you have to have the crown to do it.
Yeah. Well, let me say something about this. So, operating from the assumption that Donald Trump is out to destroy the city of London and free the United States from under the heel of the city of London and its proxies, and there's a lot of evidence for that, like withdrawing from the World Health Organization and weakening NATO, and then he's the man is full of surprises. So what he did with Venezuela, exfiltrating Maduro in a matter of hours, when the mainstream pundits and many in the independent media were talking about, oh, he's going to launch a force, ground troops, and then they were saying the same thing about Iran.
Yeah.
And I saw something today. I think Trump tweeted it out or put it out on his Truth Social. The actual days of military action by the US against Iran was 6. And this chart compared the length of military action by days in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Vietnam, and the other wars that the US has waged in the last few years. So 6 is nothing. The man is full of surprises.
Well, it's not just the man. So what we need to
So,
understand is that, yeah, it's a
that
power block.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you
Yeah.
for pointing that out,
Yeah.
right? So I just
Yeah.
wonder how they have gamed this out, and how could you take out the city of London ultimately? You to get past all the other layers, the European Union
You
and
have to,
NATO and everything, and then get to the city of London.
you have to bankrupt it all over the world. You have to remove its, you have to pulse it and continue to pulse it so you see its agents around the world and what institutions they're embedded in and how they're operating. And then you have to bankrupt the whole system. And you have to, one of the things that we saw after the 2020 election is the next 4 years, that power block didn't back down. They kept going, pushing full on, the power block around and behind Trump. And what happened? They pushed so hard that they drew all of this stuff out into the open, all of it, right? The lawfare, the criminality, the just, various political leaders, judicial leaders, et cetera, drew them all out in the open and highlighted all this stuff. People need, people need to see, the light has to be shined on the cockroaches so that they start skittering. And we realize how many cockroaches there are and what they're in and where they're running and how they're running. So, you know, there's a certain amount of what's happening in Canada, which is just a straight power play, a straight totalitarian power play that you have to let happen so that the people see it, so that when you do move, all other, the people realize that there is no other option but the use of force. Now you got to try everything. And then, that's a very interesting thing for the Americans in particular, because before we finally signed the Declaration of Independence, there was 20, 30 years of an effort to draw all of this stuff, all of the corruption and everything out there and bring it out into the open and have, go through every process, step, relationship, engagement, et cetera, necessary to try and achieve redress, and demonstrating that there was no redress. There's no redress. There is now only a fight. That's what I think is shaping up in the Anglosphere. That fight is shaping up as we realize and we start to realize how infiltrated we are and how controlled we are by the Europeans, and have been since 1688, really 1660.
Blaine?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the point is, Americans especially are waking up to a reality that no one's coming. Trump can do what he wants to do, but no one's coming. Now, everybody would love to see us wake up tomorrow and there'd be 45,000 overnight arrests and Gitmo is booming. Things are wonderful. And we see signs of encouragement that something like that could be out there. However, you can't plan for that fable or that happily ever after until you see it manifest itself. But what I would say that's positive is you can know you're getting to your enemy when they react in a way that you know that they wish they could have concealed. Meaning
Yes.
So when you're attacking a bottom line for the City of London, let's say you cost somebody $400 million by screwing up their algorithms because you put out a social media tweet that looks like the Iranians and us are going to work it out. Well, that's bad, but it's not unconscionable and there's not going to be a reaction, although it adds up. But when you see things like the Venezuela operation that you're talking about, and as soon as we parked the Ford off the coast of Venezuela, the Brits went nuts. And they immediately reacted, not responded, but reacted. You had MI6 saying, we're not going to share any intel with you on the Caribbean, period. Well, they would never have said that publicly, ever. Even I've been at NATO when the Brits would come into our delegation and just scream and yell at us until they were blue in the face, but that shit would never hit the newspapers. And so then blast forward to the Straits of Hormuz. Scott Bessent, who I would call the actual warfighting general in this thing, has put a big, nasty ass dent into the Lloyd's of London monopoly. He has essentially sanctioned and put 7 banks from Switzerland and Dubai all the way to Hong Kong on life support. Embers in Switzerland is done. And he has what he's been doing is he's drying up the capital. So it's not just about the payroll checks going through UAE and into the pockets of the IRGC. They're losing their business model of how they make money in the Middle East. They're losing players when you see UAE flip out and go to OPEC. These are all visible signs. But when you see the UK say you can't use our military bases, NATO does the same. We're not going to help you. And then they say nasty things in the press. To me, those are elements that, okay, whatever our operations are, we're getting to them. They're reacting in a way that they wish they didn't have to or wouldn't want to. So they're outwardly swinging fists. So those are encouraging things. Where does it end up? I don't know. We want to see the big play soon. But if it doesn't happen by mid July here in the United States will be too close to midterms, and then we have other concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Something you mentioned earlier, EM, was about the Governor General unleashing the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the military on the Albertans or the Canadians. Now, my understanding is that when the military change or the police force, the security forces change sides, that's when revolutions win.
Yes.
So then what the
Yes.
Governor General would be would be inviting Canadians to attack Canadians. But then you said there's these hundreds of thousands of Indians that are being brought in and that they will fight.
Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, please correct me here, Blaine, if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's been a war in Canada, a real war, since the early 1800s.
That's correct. Absolutely correct.
Right.
Wow.
Right?
On Canadian soil, I would
Yep.
say it would be the French Indian Wars, where young officer George Washington cut his teeth working for the lobsters.
Yeah. So Canadians are really some of the most pacifistic people I've ever met.
Me too. Look at
And
me.
yeah, because they've been secured by three oceans. Got to remember the Arctic, right? Um, and by the United States. So I don't know that the Canadians would rise up if there was a strong enough show of force from the government. I don't know that the Canadians would rise up and fight back. More than likely, it would have to take U.S. intervention and U.S. forces.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with that. And actually, that's why they have been picked as the perfect mark if they can't get Russia done.
Yes,
Look at the trillions they have in natural resources,
yes,
and they're just there for the picking. They are the most compliant
yes,
citizens I have
yes,
found worldwide, including Europe.
yes,
Can
yes,
Okay, I'm going to share something which I've only ever
yes.
said privately to a few Canadians. Blaine, I didn't know you were half Canadian. Forgive me. I'm going to tell you a racist joke about Canadians, which speaks to
I'll cry.
this.
Don't make me cry.
which
That's my
speak
Canadian side talking.
which speaks to this, right? And when I was at university, I hitchhiked across Canada from Toronto to Vancouver. It was
Mm.
wonderful, and Canadian people are wonderful. So the joke is, how do you get a Canadian out of a phone booth? You ask. But in that joke, there is a truism that you're
Yeah,
pointing to about the
yeah,
Canadian culture. They're just really lovely people.
yes. And
There
this
was
is
a
why they're being
sitcom.
conquered. Yeah, go ahead,
There,
Blaine. Yeah.
there was a sitcom we had, and I wasn't really paying attention to it. And there was a line in the sitcom where he looks at this guy not doing anything when he needed to do something. And he said, "Quick, man, don't just stand there like a Canadian."
Well, this
I
is
feel
why
good to come
Canada is
out there.
being conquered without a shot fired.
Yeah.
But they are, with this new governor in there, right? They are preparing for the possibility of the use of force against their
Okay.
own citizens. And there's a lot of things that the threat of the use of force can accomplish without you having to use actual force.
Right. But isn't there an element, a sort of ornery, bolshy element within Canadian culture? The people of the is it the Okanagan, the Bible Belt of
Mhm.
Canada, beautiful place, by the way.
I used
And
to ride my horse into Okanagan regularly, right
right,
across the border there. Yeah, yeah,
my favorite part of Canada because it's hot.
yeah,
Um, and then also that they were involved in expeditionary forces fighting overseas during the Second World War, for example. So they have that element,
yeah.
that potential.
Yeah, so I mean, they are the same stock as Americans, right? Heritage Americans. They are the Canadians, the same stock. Um, it's there. It's just people need to realize Canada is very large.
Mm,
It's got a tiny population comparatively. Um, how would a fight there shape up? Right? The natural resource, Canada's rich in natural resources, but most of that's shut out in the west and the north, and they have very harsh winters. So a fight in Canada would be a very interesting thing. It doesn't take much for the government to, use its existing forces to control people. They can plus that up with, Indian irregulars or regulars very quickly and use them to suppress the people. You can already, this is being set up. I've been saying it for a couple of years, but I'm now hearing other voices say, well, we're shaping up a fight against the Indians all over here in the
Yep.
US and elsewhere, right? So, you know, what can be done, I think, is being done on the global level, on the international level. What can be on the financial level? But they're all in. The enemies of all of us, the financialists, are all in on conquering Canada for its natural resources without having to fire a single shot. But this appointment of this new governor general indicates to me, and this person's background and past, et cetera, indicates to me that they are preparing to fight their own citizens and us if need be.
Yeah. Yep. She is the founder, I guess, of the ICC and made it and was instrumental in making the International Criminal Court permanentized. So her globalist credentials and bona fides are legendary. She is absolutely a Kool-Aid mixer for the city of London.
Oh yeah,
and a woman bereft of one single ounce of care or feeling for any law-abiding citizen of Canada. And so when we talk about that person in that role and what she could do, she will make Julia Freyland look like a Girl Scout. And a little note on the Okanagan area. My mother hails from Oliver, British Columbia, which is in that region.
yeah.
And that's where the Canadian side of me hails from. So
Very nice. What's that monster you all got up there in the lake?
what
Okanagan?
with
You
look,
got your own.
I,
You got your own Nessie story. Yeah.
they do have a
Like,
Nessie story, but here in Coeur d'Alene,
yeah,
all we care about is the Squatch. And I've
gotcha.
invited him over for drinks several times. Hasn't taken me up one time. I you know what I call that? Fear.
Oh, Blaine, you're so fabulous. You're so funny. Let us know in the comments if you'd like Blaine to invite you over for a drink.
With Sasquatch. Yeah.
That's right. Also, if you'd like EM to invite you over for a drink as well, let us know in the comments. No guarantee you'll get invited,
No,
but we'd like to
no.
know. EM, Blaine, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Subscribe to my newsletter. I'll be doing group seminars, Zoom calls for paid subscribers, and also my new channel, Rich Does Politics, clips on YouTube.